welcome to the Technical Advisory Committee meeting today. Think we're online as well, is that right?
Yes.
Good deal. My name is Zane Dunham. I'm the county engineer and chairperson for the Technical Advisory Committee, otherwise known as TAC. We're glad to have all of you here, and we're going to go around the room and everybody introduce themselves, to tell us your name and where you work, and before we get started. We'll start back here with you, sir.
Oh, I'm just with IT.
You're with IT. Yeah. Very important.
Gus.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gus. Matt?
So I'm actually Jacob Logan with the Government Material Thomas Director of the Office there, representing that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Super.
I'm Mitch Dukes, I'm the Director of Services for the City of Louisville.
Matt, the Director of Parking Transportation Administration.
Brenton Lane, Planning and Programming, Textile Waco District.
Jeff Jackson, Waco Area Office, Textile.
Johan Vasquez, Financial Analyst, Textile. Dallas Teston, State Infrastructure Bank Program Lead with Textile.
Victor Gable, Textile Waco District, Director of Security.
Andy Moore, City Relation Lakeview.
Lucas Kumar, Waco MPO.
I'm Zane.
Frank Lance, the City of McCurtain.
Amy for Lark Island, City of Waco. I'm Zane's right-hand vice chair.
Okay. Grace Meek, working in the Clinton Community College. I'm representing the bike and pedestrian work group.
Ransom Oliver's Arthur Short, City of Beverly Hills, Code Enforcement.
Frank Stevenson, Waco Transit System and Clinic County Transit District.
Claire McDonald, Land Agriculture Board, and I'm also the legislative chair for the Texas Auto Dealers Association, our national guide for our state car dealer association.
Jason Smart, Planning Services and City Waco. And for Planner Waco MPO.
Daniela Gallegos with Waco MPO.
All right, thank you all for attending. Lucas, did you want to say anything before we get started?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that seeing a few new faces, this is really exciting because the two very important thing that I want to mention is so we have been trying to make that in this community because a lot of this is making that excellent. And we do most of our planning processes normally directly, but it is really important that we help with our data in the future. And so I'm really excited that Jacob is here and in the chamber. And also it's very excited that Claire is here. And one of the things that you may not know is that the fastest decision on legislation that is very important for all the voice actually happening for leadership at the leadership. And so Claire handles all of that. And so she has on the ground knowledge about what it really takes because most of the time when we are thinking about it, we're thinking about this is location, this is latitude, longitude, and all about it. But she knows what kind of transformer we need and what kind of loads and all the kinds of problems that occur when you actually start doing it. Not going from knowledge transformer nodes to figure out how you price some of these things. And so those are all going to be really important considerations for us as we move forward. And so we're really excited for doing it.
Okay. Yes, we are. Well, first up on our agenda is a presentation and discussion regarding the Texas State Infrastructure Bank, SIB support, transportation loan program. And I guess we have.
It's me.
Who speaks?
As you mentioned, my name is Dallas Teston. I work for TxDOT out of our Austin headquarters. I'm the State Infrastructure Bank Program Lead. Today I'm just going to give you all a little background on our program, kind of the nuts and bolts on eligibility, as well as a timeline and the advantages of using the program. One of the first things I want y'all to know is that the SIB is a low-cost borrowing option for transportation projects that TxDOT offers. To kind of give a little background on us, so it acts as a revolving fund. So any revenue we get into the fund, so repayments, interest on cash, it all goes right back into it. So we can build it up and get more projects done over time. One of the things I'll mention here, we're using non-federal dollars. So the SIB itself won't federalize your project. So it doesn't come with any additional federal stipulations with it. We are in partnership with FHWA, a program under a federal pilot program. I'll touch on in a minute what that means. It's really just the eligibility of the projects that it affects, but there are no other kind of stipulations with the dollars that we're using. A little stats on us. We've done 146 loans to date for 728 million in loans, and we've leveraged that to help get done about 8 billion in projects across the state. So who typically borrows from us? Our typical borrower is a local government like yourself. So 75% of our loans have been to cities and counties. Tack on another 5%. Some communities have used their economic development corporations. So using the 4B sales tax is an eligible pledge for our loans. So they've used that to get transportation projects done. The other kind of 20% have gone to, 12% has gone to water supply entities. So water supply corporations, MUD, SUDs, and those are typically for utility relocations on TxDOT projects. We've also worked with a good amount of the RMAs around the state. So to give you kind of a visual of where our loans have gone, y'all being in Waco, probably no surprise that a lot of these have been up and down the I-35 corridor. So there's been a lot of growth in there, and we've seen a lot of activity with communities kind of growing, need to take care of their transportation systems. But we've really worked all over the state to help communities get their projects done. So locally, we've done 3 loans within the Waco district. The most recent one being with the city of Whitney back in 2014. City of Robinson back in 2001. And those are 3 different uses there. So actual construction on expansion of a roadway, there's a right-of-way purchase and a utility relocation. So those are 3 of the common uses of our program. So diving into eligible projects and uses. So I'm actually talking about the uses first. So really anything involved with the construction or reconstruction of the roadway. So the actual materials of construction, engineering work that needs to be done, anything, kind of any of those ancillary costs as well. A big one right now is contingency. So with rising labor and materials costs, a lot of our borrowers, we're encouraging them to take out additional contingency. If they don't use it, they can just return it to pay down the loan. But to go back to take out more if there are overages or change orders, we have to go back through the entire process. So we're encouraging borrowers to take out kind of more than the estimate with kind of the uncertainty right now. And then going down the list, so right away, utility relocations, also common uses of our program. Kind of one MPO adjacent. So any local match on an eligible project, you can use our program to meet that local match. If it's a joint bid on a utility, if you're just contributing funds to a project through an AFA with TxDOT, you can borrow for that as well. And any financial and legal fees that you incur with the application.
What kind of percentages are you guys recommending right now for contingency?
It really varies. We're seeing anywhere from 10 to 20, but I know it's kind of been all over the place, and maybe our district people can answer that question, what they're seeing with the projects more, but most of our borrowers are kind of in the 10 to 20% range. And as I mentioned, if you don't end up needing it, great. You can use it just to pay back towards the loan. In fact, you have to. We kind of reconcile it all at the end once the project closes, and any funds that weren't used for the specific purposes do need to be returned. One thing I'll mention here that's a little different than probably your bond or CO programs is we can't reimburse costs. So all the costs have to come after the execution of the agreement. So really, anything eligible would have to come after we execute the agreement. So jumping over to eligible projects. So as I mentioned, we are a federal program. So the roadways or any uses of it have to be eligible under Title 23. So Title 23 is really broad. There's a lot of programs that came out under that, especially with the recent legislation. So generally, any local matches under those programs. Kind of, I think, Safe Routes to School kind of comes to mind. As an eligible use, you can use a SIB loan to meet that. For the roadways themselves, so it's not necessarily an on-system roadway, so it can be on or off system. It just needs to be functionally classified above a rural minor collector. So eligible for federal funds, basically. And to kind of give an example of that, this is a snapshot over the city of Waco. So the orange ones lit up are on-system roadways that are eligible, and every other color are kind of off-system roads that could potentially be eligible to use the SIP program. And I show this just to highlight that there could be some opportunity within your community that to use our program on and off-system roadway as well. So why use our program? So what advantages do we offer? One of the big ones, I think, is the low cost of borrowing. So we don't charge any fees to apply, no fees for loan handling. We take care of it all within our office that Johan and I work on in Austin. So everything from the application all the way through executing the loan, servicing the loan afterwards, we'll track your payments, everything like that. And then it's done through a direct loan agreement. So we can be the sole purchaser of a bond or a CO if your community prefers or your advisors advise that. But legally, we do have the authority under statute to enter into a direct loan agreement with your community. And that's just done. We'll draft the loan agreement within TxDOT. We'll provide it for your city council to approve and enter into that with y'all directly. And I'll kind of go over the timeline in the process in a second. So prepayments can be made at any time. So they're callable at any time. If you want to pay it off early, you can just give us a little heads up. We'll provide a payoff amount for you. We offer flexibility. So we can pretty much tailor the payback to whatever suits your community. So we can line it up with your other debt service payments. If you need some deferral in the beginning portion, we can do that as well, either in the form of interest-only payments, or we can capitalize interest for a couple of years if you haven't budgeted for that payment. We set the rate at the time of application. So this one's pretty important right now with the rising rate environment. So we've seen rates go up pretty substantially since the beginning of the year. So we lock the rate in when you apply. So if rates keep going up as we work through the process, you'll have that fixed rate locked in from the date you apply with us. The last one, we lend at or below market rates. So what does that mean? So we use the municipal market index to set our rates. And we use two things to determine them. So we'll use the credit rating of the borrower and how long they want to borrow. So as you can kind of see on this, it's a sliding scale the farther you go out with the loan. And I don't know why my chart's all funky. Those aren't that big a part, but and this is based just as on an example this week of an A-rated borrower. So conversely, if this was showing like a 10-year, the lower the credit rating, it would tick up a little bit. We don't require a credit rating to borrow. So if you're a smaller community, don't want to incur the cost to go out and get a credit rating or maintain it, you don't have to. We just kind of use the lowest point on our scale to do that. And I will note, these are just based on this week's rates. They do update weekly. So as I mentioned, rates have kind of been going up. So this is just kind of a snapshot of what we're looking at right now for an A-rated borrower. I don't think McLennan County is an EDC this fiscal year, but this is just kind of, we do offer an interest rate discount if your community ever ends up being in an economically disadvantaged county. It updates annually. So what we do is we'll take the adjustment percentage of that list and we'll lower the rate in basis points. So this is kind of what that looks like. If it's a 4% and the adjustment percentage is 50, we'll lower it by that 0.5 down to a 3.5. So what does the process look like? I typically say it's about 4 to 6 months from actual application to disbursement of funds. It takes about 2 months to get on our commission agenda in the best case scenario. So to kick off the process, your local government will need to pass a resolution to authorize the application. You'll submit that to us with the completed application. We'll do environmental approval. So if there's state dollars on the project, if there's federal money on it, as I mentioned, if it's just CIV dollars, we don't require anything additional there. But if there's federal money or if it's a state project with a required environmental component, that will need to be completed before we can take it to our commission. So loans for under 10 million for a TxDOT project, we just have to take it once. If it's an off system or over 10 million, we do have to take it twice. We can do those on back-to-back months. Post-commission approval, as I mentioned, most of our loans are done through the direct loan agreement. We'll draft that, provide it to you and your advisors for comment. Once we've addressed everything, it'll go back to your local governing bodies, so your city council, commissioners court. for approval and execution. And then we will execute the agreement and disperse the funds either as soon as possible after that, which typically takes about a week after closing, or we can schedule the disbursement if you don't need the funds for a month or so. We can do that as well. So with that, just some of the high points. So once again, the SIB is a low-cost financing tool that TxDOT offers. On or off-system roads could be eligible. We set the interest rate at the time of application, and it's a fixed rate throughout the life of the loan. The process takes about 4 to 6 months, and we do have to get Transportation Commission approval for all of our loans. And with there's my contact information, as well as Johan, who works in our office. We're both more than available if y'all ever have questions. On our website, we have things like copy of our application. We have instructions to check eligibility. So that map I showed is our statewide planning map. We have instructions on there on how to kind of do the overlays and look at your area to kind of look at roads to see if they're eligible. We also have informational flyers, so little one-page flyers if you need something quick for your admin or staff. We also offer sample resolutions as well that you can take. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Two questions. One is, you mentioned that state school projects were eligible for this. Are generally all transportation alternative projects eligible for this loan?
So anything eligible under Title 23. So if it's a TA project, those programs are generally under Title 23, which would make them eligible for a SIB loan, basically.
And the second question is, how do you determine the EDCs, the economic EDCs?
So we have staff in Austin that uses comptroller data to determine that annually, and then the commission certifies it. They just certified the FY23 ones this past month. So there's a new list that'll be out. But yeah, all that economic data comes from the comptroller, and then it's analyzed within our TPP division within TxDOT.
All right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank y'all for letting me come today. Thanks for your time.
Next on our agenda is consideration action regarding a recommendation to the policy board regarding creation of a local fund to meet local match requirements for grant. So we discussed at the last meeting and the meeting before this idea of a local fund and how we use it for local matches, 20% matches for the projects that we're applying for. So so we had quite a bit of discussions on this, and what we are coming up with, it seems like there's a general agreement that we do need to move forward. The question now really is how do we move forward, and what are some of the different ways that we can do this? And so, so just walk you through again for some of you who are new. The idea behind a local furnish, let me give a little more background how MPO actually gets funded. So we are funded through a formula funding called PL. These PL dollars require a 20% match. In the case of the state of Texas, we are very fortunate that TxDOT uses transportation development credits, and these credits are used to complete their 20% match. What this means is that all MPOs who are the state of Texas do not necessarily have to require the member entities to pay the 20% match, because MPOs do not have any source of revenue of their own of any sort. So that is a really wonderful situation to be in, because a lot of my counterparts outside of Texas often do have this massive struggle on an annual basis in which they keep trying to plead and beg and borrow from the entities. We are fortunate that we are fine with that. This is all taken care of the statewide level. However, what it also does is it creates this notion that somehow 20% match that often the projects that we apply for can somehow appear, because MPOs do not have their own source of funds, and therefore what we thought is the best way to move forward in order to make ourselves a little more ready to apply for some of these funds through this IIJA Jobs Act, would be to in fact try to figure out how do we come up with some of the local matches. So what we came up with was starting thinking about what happens not only in the state of Texas but also outside. And so a little bit more background information I would like to share is that some of the larger MPOs such as NCT Card or Campo in Austin,
they typically have access to much larger development credits, primarily because there are plenty of toll roads in those jurisdictions. And those toll roads then allow these MPOs to use that transportation development credit as the 20% back. We don't have access to that because there's no toll road in the Waco MPO. In fact, it usually works with the district. And so in order to make us ready, what we thought was the best idea would be to create a local fund that we can that is contributed by the local government entities. And we can also use that for fundraising and use that money as a local match for most of the grant applications we make. And so move to the next one, you will see that this is an example that we applied for this. We have applied for this comprehensive safety action plan for 700,000 and 560 is supposed to be the federal share, 140 is supposed to be local match. In our budgetary estimation, about half of that is going to be in-kind match, but the remainder is something that we will have to have ready when we negotiate with the federal higher administration if we get the project money. This is the one with, in our estimation, there's a fairly high probability that we will get this. And when we get this, we by that point in time, which I expect to be sometime in March, we have to be ready with that local match. And so in this case, what we thought the way we would work this is that since there will be these projects coming up on year after year, it does not make sense to do this on one-time basis or whenever there is a project that we need to do. So ideally, we try to come up with a solution that will be consistent across the years. And so we figured that each year, a recurring $100,000 would be sufficient to cover quite a bit of these matches. And the way we broke them down, and then on our policy board, we have 20 voting numbers. Some of them are individual, such as TxDOT itself. And so when we broke it down, it came down to about 50% of the city of Waco. And McLennan County, along with the smaller cities, about 26%, and other cities that are more than 5,000 population and 4,000 each. And so the next slide gives you the two different options. So we created one scenario based on population, in which all the cities with population were 5,000 and 4,000, and the other scenario is based on policy board representation, in which they pay a little more and the county pays a little less. That's the main difference between the two. So for today, before we get to the action item, let's go back to the table. And what we would like us to do here in the TAC is to make a decision so that at the next policy board meeting, I think it would be good for us to present this as an action item so that the policy board could make any decision.
I would like to go around and ask representatives from every city that's here, that's listed, if they think that their city council would be in favor of annually contributing $4,000 to the MPO for the purpose of having seed money for future grants. That's kind of what we're talking about. So, Mitch, do you think your city council would be in favor or have any objection to $4,000?
I'd like to say no, but I'm not having an issue with it. There'd probably be a lively discussion about it, but I think they would probably.
Andy, I think you said last time you thought.
I think probably be able to do it, but it'll be a long discussion.
Long discussion.
It'll be a long discussion.
Okay. I think McLennan County would be in favor of it, but you know, none of us here can make a decision, but I'm just asking for opinions. And I know that the county always wants to help when it comes to transportation, and these grants would not just help one city, would be available for all the cities. So you know, we're always wanting to help all the communities within the county. I would say most likely probably be in favor of it. Right, right.
Yes. Yeah, I think the city would give it, if the city manager is pretty.
Amy?
If you make it 49,000, I don't have to
Yeah, but yeah, I think that council would be.
No,
I think it definitely special about it. I think it's doable, but I think it's a lot of it. And what the thresholds are could be lower, 34,000.
I guess, I don't know if it's, I mean, this is just something we're coming up with the first time ever. So it could be negotiable. I mean, I suppose, one, an entity, agency could approve less. We get what we get. I suppose an agency could approve more.
I think the point of the looking for 100,000 is if we get this planning grant, 70,000 of it is going to be spent already. So this would give us 30,000 sort of in the bank in case something else came up, so we wouldn't have to keep going back to the well. So that's the reason why we're looking at what we're looking at.
I'm just sure that it has.
Yeah.
I just have-
Yeah. And keep in mind, though, you represent all the small cities on the north, so there'll be other questions from other cities. All right, so I guess that's all the city representatives here. So,
Just a question, because I noticed that like Beverly Hills and other cities aren't on there. Is that?
so I think small is, they're not listed. Yeah, they'll be with the county.
So they would contribute.
Yes. They may.
I mean, they could.
They could.
Same
Okay.
like them too.
Yeah. Okay.
So you could be.
Okay, I tell you what, you give two, I'll give two. man.
Yeah. So with that being said, we need to take action on this to create a fund, a local fund. And I'm looking for a recommendation to either recommend or not recommend this to the policy board to create a local fund. Do I have a recommendation? A motion, I mean. Initial motion by Frank, about a second.
I'll say.
Andy seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously carried.
Thank you. This is a really big step for us.
Okay. Yes, yes. Next on the agenda is an update and discussion on national electric vehicle infrastructure, otherwise known as NEVI, on the NEVI plan.
So at the last meeting, we discussed quite a bit, so I'm not going to repeat all the items we brought up in the last discussion, but there are a few related to electric charging station items that I want to highlight for us. One is that I want to make sure that we all understand that it is a reimbursement program, meaning in all of these cases, the way it is going to work is that after TxDOT has exhausted itself of all the alternative fuel corridor stations, which in our case means two, one at the Ford dealership and the other north at the Roadrunner location. After these two are completely built, that would be the time that TxDOT will reach out to both counties because they want to make sure that all 254 counties throughout the state have at least at the minimum of one DC fast charging station, and the MPO simultaneously. Now, in our case, the county, the MPO will work closely together when the call for proposal goes out. And I would expect that to occur sometime next year or slightly later, not earlier than that, because we have to make sure that the two DC fast charging stations on I-35 in Waco area, along with all the other on the alternative fuel corridors, are completed before new funds can be allocated. And so as we move forward, there are a few things that we could do in terms of eligibility. One, to let a lot of people know that this will be happening over time. And this is not just the DC fast charging stations, but also for several level 2 charging stations. And the level 2 charging stations might actually be more attractive to businesses generally, as in anyone who has the parking spots in front of them, that could either be an incentive that they could use, and at the same time, one of the related things I want to also mention is that this would also be our time to start considering all the city's land use policies related to apartments and multifamily units, because those are the areas that keep coming up, and these are the areas where people don't have garages, and what this means is that they can't most likely install level 2 chargers anywhere. And so a lot of these multifamily units, it will be important for us to start considering how we can suggest them, incentivize them, and get them to actually start putting up at least a few level 2 chargers in the multifamily units so that they have access. And this would also go a long way for us to address several very important equity concerns related to electric charging stations. So that's the other part I wanted to mention. One of the questions that will come up quite a bit in your discussions with the businesses, in this particular case, these are considered category use vehicles. And so unless there is some very compelling reason, TxDOT takes care of environmental clearance. And two more things. One is that TxDOT will not require bonding for businesses. That question probably will come up as well. However, they do require insurance if they have that. And so right now, we are going to wait for November 15. That's the deadline when additional guidance from Federal Highway Administration is expected. And once that comes up, we will of course keep you updated with where we are. But moving forward in terms of timeline, what we are expecting is that first all the alternative fuel corridor DC fast charging stations are completed, and that's when the TxDOT will begin an open call for proposal for both a few more several DC fast charging stations as well as level 2 stations. At the last meeting, I think I had brought up some broad numbers so that for your discussions with businesses might be helpful. But the actual physical cost estimate for the DC fast charging is one for each plug for 50,000, and for the level 2 chargers at about 5,000. Is that accurate?
Put you on the spot there.
I'm gonna go with, it depends, I've learned, depends on what you mean by DC-3 fast charger. What Ford is requiring me to install is probably 200,000 for a 2-plunger. So we can't do a 1-plunger and it's confusing. The 5,000 sounds good, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
If you've got the box and it's got the units and you've got the, yeah, it's 5,000. The level 3 fast chargers are a real fascinating beast. You want just the little 80 kilowatt ones and maybe 50,000 if you have the infrastructure. But you want 150 kilowatt or 180 kilowatt, it's well in the 6 range.
Good. Well, that's really important because I think in your discussions with anyone who is considering it will be important to have that discussion. TxDOT estimated it to be about 50,000 in their levy plan. That's the information we use. So I'm so glad we're here.
Ford estimated off as well, so TxDOT Ford must have the same brochure.
We should check with facilities because we install. Well, there's a few in the May Jackson for the electric vehicles the city has there. There's one over at IT. There was a couple of facilities.
Are those level 2 or fast chargers?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think the one in the May Jackson is the level 2, and that's when they leave us you can car charging all night. I don't know about the other ones.
They may all be like.
Was that purchased from the state buy board, or was that bid out?
I don't know. But I
So that's all we have. November 15th is a major timeline for us to, there'll be the additional round of federal highway administration guidelines about how we move forward with the next rounds of funding.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is updated discussion on carbon reduction program.
So I am very excited to share that at the last policy board meeting, policy board unanimously approved the adoption of the carbon reduction program project evaluation process. So at this point in time, only update I have is Tiffany owns, who sometimes joins us at this meeting. She's a writing editor. She has offered to freely edit the document for us. So when we do this, so it's a little bit easier to read and for clarity and such. We will not change any of the content, but we'll edit it before we finalize it. The only items for discussion we have already discussed the project scoring. So for the next step is, when do you think it might be a good time to open it up for proposal? And as I had mentioned before, that most of the so there are several activities which we know are directly eligible. Public transit projects, for instance, are directly eligible. Almost all of the transportation alternative projects are directly eligible. And then any of the municipalities can think about projects that are, even when they're not directly eligible. Once you think about it, if it has carbon reduction components, it does become eligible. So for the next step, our most important consideration is when to open it up. And so we do have a little bit of technical thing that we need to sort out beforehand. So we'll do the web-based application. And we are working through some of the, as you all know, the City of Waco has a new website. And so quite a bit of material is still sort of getting transferred, so that some of the links are being tested to make sure that they're all fully active. And so we want to make sure that we don't run into a technical glitch when we open it. And so we are considering that we should be ready by sometime by the end of January to open it. So the question for us is that a good time, or is there a different timeline we ought to consider? And we are not under any major deadline that if we can't allocate funding for 2022, it will just get rolled over to the next year cycle. And so we are not in any deadline that we must assign it immediately, but I think it's better for us to start the process sooner than later. So, so I was considering if you all had any thoughts when we might want to open it.
So I have a question. If somebody had an idea or wanted to submit their project for the carbon reduction program, until we get the technical website up and running, could they just email your office with the program or project that they have in mind? And then you could see if it meets all the criteria necessary and respond back to them, and then just keep a running list.
We could certainly, so we'll offer that that advice. What is important though is that until the website is open, that we really won't be able to process it.
Right.
Well, also, we might not be able to answer questions for that entity. So it's better that the entity answer on the submission form.
I see.
Because otherwise it's going to be back and forth.
Back and forth. Well, then I'll probably recommend wait till in January. If y'all don't want to go back and forth.
Well, one of the things that we have to remember is that we did decide that the eligible entity will be the municipal entity. So the governments themselves and the transit agency. So and in our case, transit agency is part of the city of Waco. And so it's the municipalities who apply for it. So in many ways, so if there's someone who has a project idea, and they still have to go through their cities to apply.
So they can go to the cities, but they can still email you to see if it meets all the criteria. And then they could you can give them direction on how to proceed from there.
So they require a resolution that shows that their council is in support of moving forward with that grant. So you have a financial commitment as far as a match goes.
So there are two issues on the questions there. One has to do with level of support it has. That's what we discussed back there. And then the second part was actually the direct commitment portion, which gets evaluated. So if someone is offering higher matches, for instance, then their projects doesn't get more points.
Yeah. We won't take down the meeting packet information. We'll leave it up for a couple of days if you want to go back and look at that, because the latest version of that submission form is in there with the points and everything. So we'll leave it up a few more days and then but then there may be some edits, so it may not completely be in final form, but then we'll get that back out to everyone.
So y'all need some time too.
Well, we're just going to edit.
We're just going to edit.
it's mostly going to be editing for clarity purposes. So none of the content will change because we voted on the criteria and all of the public policy board is already voted, so we'll not be making any changes. It's really just going to be formatting and.
So are you still recommending the end of January?
Well, we know that before January, we will not be ready. One of the questions we had was depending on how, for each city, in your departments, there are times when you probably are swamped with more phone calls, when it is not time for you to be thinking deeply about carbon reduction. And that's why I was thinking what might be, so one of the things we could do is have a longer submission period, for instance, instead of keeping it open only for 2 months. So if you wanted to open it at the end of January, for instance, we'll probably keep it open at least till the end of March, for instance. That way it's a much longer time for you to submit. And that way, because we'll have to bring all of this back after initial screening by the staff, we'll bring it back to the TAC for you to consider an assigned budget, because you will be making the decision about which projects will go. So we need to consider all of that. So depending on how long fastest, we will probably go from opening to making recommendation to the policy board is still going to be 7 to 8 months total.
Somebody have any comments?
We get to vote for our projects, or do we have to abstain?
I think it's going to be a working group that's going to evaluate and bring a recommendation to the tax.
So you might want to volunteer.
I think end of January.
All right, so let's go ahead and January. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is discussion update from the Texas Department of Transportation regarding significant highway construction in the Waco metropolitan area. Like 5 years, that means you're up, Jeff.
That's it. All right, start here with the US 84. This is our Road to Zero project, 88 project from Center Point to Clifton Drive. Working on sidewalk, ADA upgrades, signal upgrades there, making pretty good progress there. They're about to wrap up most of the flat work. I think they've still got some left just east of Valley Mills Drive. I know I've got Billy Dayhart's group working on getting the services connected, ESID numbers for this. The new signal services, the non-core going to get those connected, and they'll start wiring up the new signal poles along the corridor. So we're seeing the light of the tunnel on this one, but still probably into January before we have everything wrapped up realistically. 18th Street ADA project, same similar scope minus the signals. They finished all work on South 2 18th Street. They I think this week wrapped up the extra work in Penelope and Aquila. We'll be coming back to 18th Street to wrap up some punch list items, add some access that we need to add back. We do have the TDLR inspection scheduled for the ADA upgrades. We'll work with Jim's group on getting the punch list from the city on that one. So that one should be pretty close to wrapping up. State Highway 31 overpass, still making good progress on this one. Right now, they're primarily focused on the widening work on FM 939 as it tees into State Highway 31, working there. Again, this project's showing to wrap up by late this next summer. Spring Valley widening, FM 2113, made a recent switch to detour traffic between Right-of-Way Drive and Old Temple Road. Looking at in the next, probably by the end of the year, make the switch for the south half of the job up to Hewitt Drive, put up traffic on detour pavement, and then start working on the actual new roadway on the north side of the road. Still making good progress on that. We're working right now primarily focused on Castleman Creek Bridge widening. So they'll be there for the next couple of weeks. State Highway 6 mall to mall. They're moving pretty well on this one. A lot of work going on pretty much in every available phase of the project. We do have some pretty substantial traffic switches coming up between now and the end of the year. I think most recently coming up next week, we're going to make some switches on the westbound ramp to industrial, opening up some new pavement there. As far as traffic knows, there won't be a whole lot of change. There will be some detour switches on that U-turn right there at that west to east U-turn at Imperial. The biggest substantial change we'll see between now and the end of the year will be putting main lane or putting traffic, new frontage road traffic, eventually main lane traffic on the new frontage roads up and over Beverly, both eastbound and westbound. I know at that point, probably the most substantial change is once we put traffic on the new eastbound frontage road between Imperial and Bagby, that Imperial on-ramp will close, and then anyone turning right from Imperial onto 6 will have to go down to the ramp before Bagby or go through the intersection, use the U-turn there to turn around. So that'll be a pretty substantial change. When we get close to that, we'll go through Jake's office and make sure everyone's aware of what's going on. I'm sure that's of interest to you down there in Colton. So
Jake and I talk all the time. He's great.
perfect. As long as they're keeping y'all happy, we're happy. So now we're making good progress there. I-35 4B, I'm not going to go through the milestones. We do that pretty much every week, but we can go through the pictures here. From what we've seen, we're pretty much finished with everything substantial. This is looking, see, we're looking north here from 11th to 12th Street. You can see main lane and final configurations, frontage road pavements tied in. There's very few spots we have left. We have some pavement tie in. So we're making good progress here. We'll go to the next one. Here's looking south, 11th to 12th Street. You can see kind of up at the top of your screen there, for the pavement next down. That's where we're going to tie in on the next project to go down south. Here's looking down the intersection of 11th and 12th Street, the new pavement there. We still need to get in there and stripe all that and open it up to pavement, but that or up to traffic, but that's taking shape nicely. Here's looking north from 4th Street. You can see the Baylor's new building, Welcome Center right there on the right side of the screen. University Parks, last week or the week before that, we opened that back up for homecoming, I believe. So hopefully most of that headache is behind us. We've got those signals up and functioning there. Here's looking down between 4th and 5th Street, looking towards Baylor. You can see the final pavement configuration of 4th and 5th Street taking place. So some striping, a lot of curb ramp, sidewalk, flat work, landscaping stuff to do here. We ought to see some substantial progress in that area specifically in the next week. And then here's looking back to south, from 4th and 5th, looking down the 4th and 5th intersection, looking back towards Waco. You can see on the left of your screen there. The little tie-in what we have left on 5th Street. So once we get that tied in, that second intersection should be complete, minus the landscaping, which will wrap up between now and the end of the year. Looking north towards the river from University Parks, you can see bridge works completed, all the ramps tied in, pavements done. The footprint of the mysterious building there on the left is taking shape, so everything's looking good there. Here's looking University Parks, looking towards Baylor, Texas Ranger Museum, Welcome Center on the right. So you can see we've got traffic. Since this picture was taken, we've got traffic flipped back over, so that intersection should be close to its final configuration there. Here's looking University Parks, looking back towards downtown. Baylor's the Robinson Tower on the right, Springfield Suites on your left. So that pavement's taking shape, and like I said, hopefully some of that headache's behind us. Again, nice wide open there. I think this is MLK looking north. So we're wide open there. You can see no traffic problems. Everything's flowing like we intended. So that's good.
I'd say that's a level A.
Level A service. Yeah, I'd say so. Here's MLK looking back to the east towards the stadium. That's in its final configuration. Again, some minor landscape and curb ramp, sidewalk, flat work that will be taking place for the next couple months. Again, here's looking south back towards 4th and 5th Street from MLK. Here's looking north from 77. You can see Bellmead Drive off the right, and that connection's made, tied in, and braided ramps all tied in. Striping's pretty much done there. I think there's some final stuff they've got to wrap up, but that's taking shape. Here's 77 looking to the east of our district office there. So that intersection started. The last one we've kind of tying in, and will start to take shape as well. Again, some striping we need to come through there, get the signals operational, U-turns up and up. That one's getting close. And there's looking south at 77. And here's looking back to the west. You can see we've tied into, made some minor changes to the pavement where we're tying into the west of here. So that way we can get something to build on the the west side for Potts Interchange soon. Working on it. Perfect. There's Sam's up there at the top right. This is the 84 intersection, northbound frontage road. Traffic is pretty much in its final configuration. There's the final striping taking shape. Again, some minor landscape work to wrap up and get all that tied in completely. There's looking south from 84. This is looking to the west of 84, away from HEB, the other direction back into Waco. So some striping there, some tie-ins. Again, the new project comes in for whatever we're doing it. The Potts Interchange will tie this into that. Here's Barron Circle looking off to the east. Pavements complete. Again, some striping, some side street work there, some flat work. Pretty much the theme for what we have remaining: landscaping, flat work, and striping. And then there's Barron Circle looking the other direction back to the west. At the north end of the project looking south there. So you can see that pretty much everything's, all the pavements and where it needs to be. Everything's opened up and for all intents and purposes, pretty close to finished. Questions? Hey, priorities.
We do have the ribbon cutting for I-35. Is that next week?
Yes, next week on Wednesday, 11th. One? Okay, perfect. Sorry, I'm aware of it. I have to look at it. Yeah, that's coming up next week, and planning to have a good turnout there. Like I said, the focus of our flat work is going to be in that area before that happens. So Weber is very busy at that intersection right now.
Thank you, Jeff. Very good presentation. And next on the agenda is work group updates. Grace here.
I don't have anything new to report. We have our next meeting on Wednesday, November 16th. So staff meeting will be, maybe not me, but someone else will be. Give an update.
Thank you. It's really important that, until now, work groups have sort of worked in the, just a few people who are really very enthusiastic about their work. And it was always difficult to connect them back through the TAC to the policy board. And so with Grace and, presenting it just in the last 3 meetings, for instance, even at the policy board level, they clearly improved sensitivity to not only the work that our work groups do, but how important it is so that we can come up with much better sets of recommendations. So thank you very much. Well, and I would, to give an example of that, I mean, I was surprised to hear that, well, I shouldn't say surprised, but it was nice to hear that the city of McGregor has been working with your group, the Cotton Belt.
Yeah, he sent an email out and approved the unit to connect with the city of Waco with, and I think he's pretty walk partners on it, so we can look at, finishing that up and connecting everything, getting it started. So yeah, that's all super positive for us. It's exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Just to highlight one more item. So Bike Ped Work Group has been the most active work group over the last 5-6 years or so. And so that has resulted in us with our transportation alternative plan. And the alternative transportation plan actually has a whole bunch of really fleshed out projects. And the result has been that that we actually, so for the city of Waco applications, they have quite a few projects that are ready to go. And similarly, in the new, at the next Bike Ped Work Group meeting, the Parks Department is going to be presenting their master trails plan for the city of Waco. And the Cotton Belt Trail is actually, again, fully fleshed out project in that. So a lot of background work that the Bike Ped Work Group has done over the last 4 or 5 years have actually started getting built now. And so they are happening now. And so we are really, really excited about how it's kind of working out now. So, yeah.
Okay. So the next on the agenda is the MPO monthly report. Okay.
So there are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. One is that transportation alternative project, I just got an email this morning. That Concord proposal has been delayed and it will be open on December 2nd. So if any of you were running against the deadline and thinking that, oh, we're running out of time, you do have time. December 2nd is when the for the project's both when the Concord proposal will open. And then they have not decided exactly how long is that going to stay open, but you do have time. And so in this round of funding, my understanding is that there is a little higher level of funding as well. And so, so please keep that in mind. The next thing I wanted to mention is if we can go to the page. Yeah, we mentioned this. Now, this deadline is November 18, so this may be. Did you all receive any applications in the district?
It goes through our traffic office. I don't know if we have them, or I'm sure we have. We should get some, especially from Waco.
Okay.
So.
Great. This was another program that we mentioned. Hopefully, some of you have taken advantage of that. The next one. And this is. Would you like to talk about this?
Sure. Yes, we have a public meeting coming up. This is November 16th, 4:30 to 6:30. This is for Franklin Avenue schematic. We were talking about doing it goes from 84 where it splits all the way up to basically Valley Mills Drive, I believe now. So we're looking at putting an overpass there at the New Road intersection and getting rid of the weird main lane frontage road section through the whole segment of Franklin there. And basically the way it's set up in front of Chick-fil-A where you have just main lanes out at the outer edges of some businesses, that's kind of the form that we're looking at doing for the south side of the road all the way up to 81st. So it's going to clean a lot of that stuff up, bring it up to criteria that we need it to be at. And then also we will be adding a lot of bike pedestrian elements, shared use path and stuff like that. So it's a really good project.
So our bike pedestrian work group next meeting is November 16. Any of you who can make it, please do. City of Waco Parks Department is going to do a presentation on their master trails plan, which we are really excited about. And also the next TAC meeting is of course January 5th. So we will not be meeting in December. Hopefully, I'm sure as we start getting close to Thanksgiving, a lot of us get into it for later. So we'll catch break. And the other thing I wanted to announce, that's more of a tentative item, is that we'd like to convene our connected automated vehicles work group again. That work group had gone dormant after our last MTP, but the reason why we want to bring them up for many reasons. One, that work group did a lot of work. And so if you have not, I don't expect all of us to have read our entire last 45 MTP, but if you paid attention to it, it actually had really futuristic discussions about connected automated vehicle. Stuff that are written in there are being discussed more thoroughly today. So we were at least 2-3 years ahead of what the general discussion has been. A lot of that had to do with the group that was working in the connected automated vehicles work group. At that point in time, however, they also did not have, there was simply not enough clarity among the other people. So they were in fact pushing forward with a lot of really bright ideas. And so we want to bring them together. And this time we in fact have a little more information and we are simply at a better state in terms of technology that's available. So our thought process is that at this point in time, all the electric vehicle and electric charging station or electric charging network, all of that discussion is in fact going to funnel through the connected automated vehicle, because as electrification begins, one of the important things that's going to happen is that electric cars are not just cars, they're more like data points. And so in that sense, our entire thought process about connected automated vehicle is going to be a little different. It's actually going to be a lot more data driven. And yesterday, I don't think any of you were there. JB, if you want to talk a little bit about yesterday's infrastructure summit that just happened, in fact, where this was directly a major component of the discussion about how we anticipate next several years to be.
Yeah, sure. So, the Waco Chamber held an industry conference in Texas tomorrow. The Waco Chamber Infrastructure Summit. So we covered all things infrastructure from 9 to 4 yesterday, talking about topics like broadband, cybersecurity, transportation, water, and energy, all through the lens of what is the future of infrastructure in our state. So as we project 10, 15 years from now, we look at adding the 2 million people to our population, what does it look like to have an infrastructure system that is interconnected, that is reliable, modernized, to meet that growing demand on the economic development side, but also on the just on the basic consumer side. So we're really excited. Really think there's gonna be a lot of cool things out of it. We're doing some different partnerships with Cash and MPO, but also with some guys in Austin who really do a lot of cool work in terms of future infrastructure tech space. So similar to the way which we really wants to be involved with, wants to be part of that conversation. Hopefully, kind of help lead that conversation in our city and our region.
Yeah, so fortunately I was there and it was a really exciting, all the people, getting really excited about the future of Texas and future of infrastructure in Texas. And we probably are better situated than most other states in the country over the next 25, 30 years. And so if we make some of the good decisions with all the information we have, we can sort of stay ahead of, we're already doing much better than most of the states, and stay ahead of other states for a fairly long future. And so, so I see a really important role here with connected automated vehicles work group. In fact, we want to bring some of that discussions in so that we can talk more generally about. So not only that, some of the basic ideas that we've started considering is it's becoming more and more clearer to most people that transportation planning is not just about transportation. It's also about land use. It is about environment. It's about quality of life, how we do things. So in that sense, it's not even just a line on the map in which you go from point A to B. It's actually more about how we exist in an urban space altogether. And so this connected automated vehicle work group in that sense is going to play a major role along with bike and a couple of other work groups for our next MTP. So we have sort of started stirring our discussion, beginning phases of the discussion about our next MTP, which is still 2 years away in terms of adoption. But as we move forward, this group is going to be important. One of the things that I would like you to do, to consider is, if you'd like to come to the meeting, please all come to the meeting yourself. But anyone else you think in your community needs to be involved with it, please bring them along with you. And then we will try to keep them in that work group for the next 2 years so that we can have an amazing
So, 2 questions. So the BOCPED meeting is on Wednesday, November 16th, as is the TxDOT public meeting for the Spur 298. So what time is the BOCPED
It's
meeting?
like 10.
Oh, 10 in the morning?
Yes.
Okay, then y'all start at 4:30 in the afternoon?
It's outdoors, assuming it's nice weather.
Okay. We plan to meet on bike or foot in the park. Second question on the connected and automated vehicles work group. Is anybody from Amazon or the trucking industry a member of that work group? We are still collecting names at the moment. So we are obviously really hoping to we have.
It's gonna have that schooler name. That's way too technical.
Okay, we'll change the name of the work group. That's perfectly fine. Yes.
They're all computers. They're all computers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was not only item 7, but item 8 announcements. And we're not having our meetings for TAC in December. We'll start back in January. Request for agenda items to be considered on future meetings. That was one item that we did not have. Do we have any items that we want to speak about on future meetings? Any issues?
I'm ready.
You're ready? Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
You mentioned about our charging station.
That sounds great.
So a year ago, for the diesel, or Volkswagen cheated with their diesels. We have to build chargers, we have to build and have to spend, install all the charger requirements, it's a lot. But if we really did have these 2 and eventually 3 fast chargers at every Ford dealer in America, the Ford chargers, anybody can use. Right now, not everybody can use the Tesla fast chargers. You can use all the Tesla level 2s, but I can't take my Ford Lightning to a Tesla fast charger. But you'll be able to take your Chevy or Hummer or whatever to the Ford chargers, and I'm sure vice versa. But the ones Ford's asking us to build are much faster than the ones, the ones in the skiway with garage, things like that. So anyway, that's how it goes. I spent 6 months looking for which charger I wanted to install, and shopping chargers I knew nothing about. Turns out these things often don't work when you pull up to them, and that's a big gripe people have. Charge Point seemed to be kind of the name brand, big company, so we ordered those. They're $110,000 each. We didn't buy any warranties or maintenance plans because those were very expensive. So hopefully they work. I don't know. And then Ford has their own now that are 180 kilowatt. I think it's like 400 amps. Huge numbers. I'm learning the difference between kilowatt and amp. Anyway, so we'll have those 2. Then I guess what happened next was the federal infrastructure program came out, and they said there's going to be another round of funding, but you can't spend this money within 50 miles of where somebody got the Volkswagen money. So I didn't know I was excluding people when I applied for mine, but so nobody, that's why I'm one of the 2, is because once those 2 get built, then they'll look at where else to put them. If I put on my Capital car dealer hat, I don't want anybody to build one near me because I'm gonna have to figure out how to get my money back on what I'm spending. I'm gonna have to sell this electricity. So put on my consumer legislative hat, we want these where they're gonna be best for people to use. And I've got a pretty good location, but it's not Magnolia or Baylor's Walker Center, or it's not a 10 out of 10 location. So that'll be kind of interesting to see where else the next one's going. But
You said 2 things that come out here. One was the biggest gripe was that they don't always work. You go to pull up to charge them. And then you said something else that may be related, but one size doesn't fit all. Like when you pull up to a gas pump, the nozzle fits in everybody's gas port into their vehicle, but not so on a charging vehicle.
yeah, it's pretty standardized from what I can tell. It's like Apple and Windows. There's Tesla and everybody else. So there's pretty much no charger I can pull up to and not use except for Tesla. The Tesla superchargers. I can't use those because I don't have a Tesla account. There's an adapter, but I don't have an account.
So was the not working part come in, and not due to the connectivity, but lack of electricity?
No, I've just been looking at all of them when I drive by them. And, there's apps, there's little apps where you can look, and if you look at the reviews on these places, it often says you're not working. I go to a lot of meetings at nice hotels, so I look at the charger in the parking lot, and it's often out of service. I don't know if that's a hardware, software, maintenance.
Yeah.
People vandalize these things because there's the whole environmental, sometimes piece. We're pretty worried about that.
Yeah.
I'm a truck dealer in Waco, and I'm gonna put EV chargers out,
I don't have information on that, but part of your plan, did that include operations and maintenance?
It did, but there wasn't enough money to cover that, so.
Well, for the, just to put that in perspective, for the next round, after the DC fast charger, I believe the operations and maintenance portion is about 450,000 for Waco MPO area. And 1.8 million is the total available grant after this for the charging station itself.
I'm interested in this maintenance piece because I installed 3 chargers back in 2010. We didn't start selling cars. We've used them almost none. They work great. They're 12 years old. They've had 0 issues. We just took one of them off the wall and put a new one up. So those are level 2s. They seem to be really maintenance free. I didn't know who I'd call it, bro, because they just always work. These decent fast charging level 3s, they seem to be a whole different deal. I think a lot of it's with the heat. Huge. I mean, I think when I put my phone on the wireless charger, it gets awful hot. Imagine charging a battery it's a third the size of this room. It's 3,000 pounds. There's a lot of heat involved in that. So there's actually some antifreeze that goes through those big old cables. It's a big battery. It's fascinating to see just the battery.
That's cool. Hey, you forgot the cash for government. Anybody else? Any comments, questions?
Mitch, do we have a motion to
Move adjourned.
move adjourned? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Nice to meet you, sir.
On the spot, you look well.
Thank you.